I'm unmuted. I did unmute. An alert came up saying, click, host wants you to unmute. So I clicked unmute. Do you need me to do something?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. So yeah. No, I think I can. Are we live? Are we live? All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I didn't realize that we were live here with our live stream. So I'm Liz Kreutz. Thank you all for joining us. I'm sure a lot of you are just going to start joining us in the next few minutes as you get the alert that we're starting our voting town hall. We're going to answer your questions in real time about everything from early voting, mail-in voting, concerns about voting fraud, voter suppression, ballots on election day and how that works. So send us your questions. We are live all over the place on Facebook, on our website, on YouTube, on Roku, and some of our streaming apps. So if you have questions, the best way to send them to us is on Facebook, on our Facebook Live, on the ABC7 News Facebook page. We're monitoring those there, and we will ask them of our panelists. You can also tweet me, but I think the best thing to do is go to Facebook if you can. So I'm sure people are still joining us, but here's our wonderful panel for the hour. I will introduce you starting with Carol Moon Goldberg, who's the president of the League of Women Voters. Then below that, we have Julia Marks, staff attorney with Voting Rights. Next to her is Shannon Bushy, the registrar of voters with the Santa Clara County. And above that there, Tim Dupuis, registrar of voters from Alameda County. So thank you guys for joining us. I'm excited about this. Busy time for all of you, I assume. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to start with the news that we saw today. I have it from the Secretary of State's office. It says over 1.5 million vote by mail ballots have already been returned by California voters. They compare that to 2016 general election. At this same time in 2016, approximately 150,000 ballots had been returned at this same point. So a massive increase in mail-in early voting. So Carol, I want to start with you. When you saw that number, were you surprised by that? Is that what you were expecting, or is this even more than you thought?
I was muted. I thought it would be a large number, but my crystal ball isn't very good. It's been really cloudy with smoke and COVID germs and things. So I'm very gratified to see that many people have taken this seriously and want their voices to be heard. And my organization is all about having people's voices heard. So I am very gratified to see that number. And I hope people continue to vote at that rate.
Shannon, I'll start with you. What are you seeing right now in terms of your county? We're seeing that overwhelmingly huge numbers of people are already sending in their ballots. Is that what you're seeing in Santa Clara County?
That is true for us. Yes, we're at historical numbers for this time frame. I just hot off the presses got an update that we've received over 70,000 ballots in Santa Clara County up till today. So, basically in the first week. So for us, that is extremely high. We were looking at numbers just like November 2 years ago. At this point, we had only received 0.16% of our returns, whereas now we're closer to about at least 5%. So we're seeing a great increase of the early returns here, yes.
And Tim, you as well, you had some pretty striking numbers.
As of today, this morning, we were at 95,000 votes cast. So we're 950,000 registered voters right now, so about 10% return. We saw that we were getting some early returns right on our first day. We had in-person voting in our office here. We had at least 100 people show up on the first day for in-person voting.
Wow. And Julia, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself a little bit. You're the staff attorney with Voting. What do you do? What does Voting Rights do? Explain to our viewers.
Yeah, so I'm on the voting rights team at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus. So our organization works across a range of issue areas to support low income and immigrant communities and Asian American communities more generally. So our voting rights team is really interested in making sure that the electoral process includes all Californians who are eligible to vote. There are a very large number of Californians who are eligible, but do not participate frequently in voting. And we see that as particularly true among Latino and Asian American communities. So part of our mission is to make sure folks have the information they need to participate in the process, and also to reduce barriers in the voting process, such as language barriers that might make it harder for them to participate.
Absolutely, thank you. So we're getting a lot of questions and that I'm monitoring, and so I keep looking. I'm going to start with Brenda. She's asking, my husband prefers to vote in person. He received an absentee mail ballot, but would rather vote at the polls on November 3rd. Is that still an option in contrast to the county? And I know we don't have a representative here from Contra Costa County on, but Carol, if you want to take that, is in-person voting day still an option?
Yes, it's an option in all counties. Go to the Contra Costa County's website. It should tell you where voting locations are that you can appear in person. Most of them will be open 4 days before the election. Some might be open more closer to 11 days before the election, but consult your county and actually look at the ballot, the package that you got with the ballot in it, because it might well have a list of voting locations and their hours and days of operation. So that would be your first look. If you don't find that, then go to the Contra Costa County's registrar's website, and they will have that information there.
Deborah's asking, and Tim, I'm going to give this one to you. Deborah's saying, question about processing of mail ballots in the upcoming election. When are they processed and approved by the county, and when are they actually counted? My ballot has been accepted by Contra Costa County. Does that mean my votes will be counted on election morning and be included in the first returns that precincts report when the polls close?
I'll speak to how we handle it in Alameda County. So we're receiving those vote by mail votes right now, and we're going through and we're validating the voters by the signature on the ballot, and we're getting those ballots ready to be processed. Around 10 days before election, we start scanning those ballots that we've received into the system. We don't count them. We can't tally the ballots, but we can queue them up. And any of those early votes that we can get queued up, which usually are almost all the way up to election day, those will be the ballots at 8 p.m. that we tally and get the first early votes out to the public. So those early votes will be included in the very first early unofficial tallies that we post out to the public.
And Shannon, if you want to jump in there too with what your county does in terms of when you start counting ballots. I was at your county registrar of voters office a few weeks ago. You have quite the, I know you're getting a lot of people already sending in their ballots, and people want to know. I think they're doing it early because people want to make sure it's going to be counted.
That is correct. We do the same process as Tim had mentioned. You know, there are a number, about a couple weeks before, where you do start scanning those into the voting system. As he said, it doesn't do the tally. That will release to us all at 8 o'clock on election night. So we have the same process that Tim spoke of, and begin processing ahead of time, as we're, you know, also waiting from the Secretary of State for official write-in lists, you know, for candidates. And we need to incorporate those counts also, which comes around the same time, the 10 days for the election. Yes.
We're getting a lot of questions about that in terms, I think people are hearing these, you know, pundits talk about how we shouldn't expect an outcome on election day because so much of this mail-in voting is going to change how we're able to count the ballot. So I think that's also leading to some confusion. If you vote, does it matter how you vote? If you go put it at your city hall Dropbox, if you put it in the post office, is there one way you would recommend over another to make sure your ballot gets in early? And I'm not sure if Carol, you want to take that, or whoever wants to jump in on that.
I actually don't have the answer to that. I would say, as a voter, you want to get your ballot in, period, and make sure it's in time so that it can be counted. And then when in the process that's counted, I'll leave that to our two registrars.
So Tim, do you want to take it?
Sure, sure. And it's going to be the same, I'm sure, with Shannon. All of the ways that they can deliver their ballot to us are pretty well outlined in our voter information guide and online. They can get it to us through the mail, through one of our drop boxes at our office. We have a drive-through drop stop throughout the county that people could drive in and drop off their ballots. I'd encourage people to get their votes in early if they want to get them tallied right away. I think what's going to be interesting is now that we're seeing that the people are bringing their votes in early in record numbers, as we said, as Shannon and I just said what our numbers are. If we see more people, if the majority of people get their votes in early, we're going to be capturing most of those votes on election night. If we start to see them being dropped off on election night or in the mail on election day, then those votes are going to come in after election day, and we'll be continuing to tally those. So it's going to be interesting. I know, Shannon, you've been a Voters' Choice Act county, so you've seen some of this in past elections.
That is true. And like you said, it depends on when voters mail them in. We are, current in past elections on processing all of the ballots we receive up and through the weekend before election day. And then we have typically received, 150,000 ballots on one day, election day, and then, between the mail and the drop off. So those do take time to then process after. All of the registrars have 30 days after an election to canvass all of our results. We have our election night results that we all work on until everything's come in from polling places or the vote centers. But then we all have all the vote by mails and provisional ballots and other processes and audits and all our systems and cross-checking to do within 30 days after the election. So that 30-day deadline is the same deadline that has been in place before. So our voters, and we've really, all the counties have been doing a great getting more information out to our voters about the process after, because people do wonder, well, how come you're not finished counting a day or two after the election? Why can't you give us the final results? Well, there's a long process. There's hundreds of thousands of ballots that come in, in 1 week time. And then we go through and process. I want to assure everyone that we all process every single ballot that comes in until everyone is reviewed and, signature checked and determined and tallied. So, it is a process, takes some time after, but we do a lot of similarities with Tim.
For sure. Julia, I want to get to you. There's a lot of concerns right now across the country about voter fraud, voter suppression. What is poll monitoring, and what do voters need to know about what that is?
So our organization runs a very large poll monitoring program in Northern California, and other organizations in the state and around the country will be poll monitoring as well. So we see poll monitoring, legitimate poll monitoring, as an effort to assist counties and assist voters by just being an extra set of eyes to make sure that voters have access, that things are running smoothly, that important civil rights laws, like laws requiring language assistance or disability access, are all being complied with. So it's really just supposed to have an extra set of people out there double checking and trying to catch any issues, work with the elections offices, and be collaborative and supportive to the process. Unfortunately, some people have been reframing poll monitoring in a way that's much more malicious, where it's meant to actually intimidate voters and feel like they're being spied on, threatened, questioned, and that is not okay. It's not something that helps the process, and it's also not legal. California has very strong laws that prohibit voter intimidation. They prohibit people from pretending to be security guards outside of the polls. They prohibit people from questioning a voter's eligibility. So we want to make sure all the poll monitors are fully trained and out there to be good and supportive assistance to the process, rather than people using the moniker of poll monitoring as a guise to do voter intimidation.
Absolutely, for sure. And I also want to just keep reminding our viewers to send us questions that you have about voting, early voting, how to do it if you haven't done it so far, registering to vote. registered to vote, COVID-19 safety precautions, which we'll get to as well. So keep those questions coming. Best thing to do is do it on our Facebook page. We're streaming this town hall live right now there. We are getting a question from someone who tweeted this at me, and they said, as ballot boxes are left open and ballots not secured, who's watching the ballots? Where are they being stored? And I think that maybe someone might want to fact check that. I don't know, Carol, do you want to take that? As ballot boxes are left open and ballots not secured, there's a lot of fear around that right now.
There are a lot of guidelines about ballot box handling, where they are. If they're freestanding outside a building, they need to be bolted down. They need to be made of a certain material. I mean, there's just lots and lots of rules about that. As to who's watching or how quickly they are emptied, I will leave that to our two registrars. But there are a lot of regulations about these, and they are designed to make sure they're safe and they're not just available for tampering.
Shannon or Tim, do you want to jump in on sort of where these ballot drop boxes are stored?
Sure. I mean, we have 100 drop boxes in Santa Clara County. And as Carol said, there are laws and regulations and markings and ADA accessibility and even the size of the slot that is just made, for the ballot, very small. They are secure. They may be bolted down in our county, chained down. So we do not have any ballots that are left out, that are unsecured, that are open. And our staff, the registrar of voters is the one in teams of 2, because we have chain of custody, always must have minimum 2 people at all time with ballots. So we're out there daily to do pickups of all of our drop boxes. So they can rest assured that they are secure and they are in our possession when we empty out the boxes and bring them back to our secured, locked facility here.
And Tim, how can people make sure that they are dropping their ballot off in an official ballot drop box? Because we did see these reports this past week about the California GOP setting up their own drop box locations.
Right. Well, to start with, they can go to our website and see where we've officially installed all of the drop boxes, starting with that. So we also have it called out in our voter information guide. But then the way that we've branded the boxes, our boxes fall under the same regulations that Shannon outlined, and we fall under that same chain of custody rules. But the branding we have around it has our official seal for our registrar of voters for Alameda County. It has our language branding and all the things that we're required by California law to put on these boxes to make sure that it has all the information our voters need.
Julia, as we go back and talk about voter suppression, we've seen these lines across the country of people waiting 11 hours in line to vote. That's not something we typically have seen here in California. Do you expect that to happen this year? Are you guys bracing for any kind of, long lines of that level here in California? And why do you think we haven't seen it to that extent?
Yeah, so I can't predict exactly what will happen on election day. And a lot of folks, including the excellent registrars, are planning, I think, for some lines, honestly. But the important thing is to really get out the message to voters about the range of options they have and to emphasize the availability of early voting opportunities. A lot of counties for the first time will be offering multiple places over the weekend before election day where voters can go to vote. And we really want to make sure to get the word out so voters know about that and can use that option and kind of spread out the flow of in-person voting over multiple days. And then the other piece of that is continuing to uplift the availability of vote by mail and to emphasize the security of vote by mail and the range of options people have for turning in their ballot. People don't have to mail it back if they have worries about the mail system. They don't even have to use a drop box. They could walk to their voting location and hand it over and not have to worry about waiting in a long line to fill out their ballot inside. So California is really fortunate to have strong laws that provide a lot of flexibility to voters. So it's kind of on us as the community-based organizations and the voting advocates and other folks to just get the word out as much as we can so people take advantage of those options and we don't have to see long lines on election day.
For sure. Shannon, I mean, are you expecting super long lines in Santa Clara County anywhere?
I'm not sure about the word super, but you
good.
know, our vote centers are going to be open for 4 days. And if people do, as others said earlier, look at the website, look at the insert in the mailer that we send you with your ballot with all the location and the time frames and all of the early voting. You could vote now or the weekends before or the 4 days at the vote center. So a lot of people do like to wait till the last day, till November 3rd. So, you know, with the pandemic, I think, you know, maybe Tim feels the same way, but it's a little harder to predict how many people are going to actually go to the polls versus how many will use the vote by mail ballot. Our county has always been very high. Over 80% of our voters vote by mail. So will we have our normal voters go to the polls, or will there be, you know, less due to the pandemic or more because they're hearing things about voting by mail, which are not true because there is no widespread fraud in vote by mail in California. So it really, you know, we're prepared for as many people that want to come, but I think we'll have to wait and see if it will be a typical election or more or less due to the pandemic.
For sure. And Tim, I'll let you jump in there too. But as we're talking, Carla on our Facebook chat said, why is it that some people are having to wait in line for 9 hours to vote? So, you know, people are concerned about these lines, but are you expecting 9-hour lines or more maybe 30, 45-minute lines?
Well, I certainly don't want to see 9-hour lines.
Yeah.
And as our other speakers have said, in California, our voters are all getting their ballot in the mail, and hopefully they're getting the information that they have a lot of really good options to get those votes in. But like Shannon, we have 80% of our voters that are permanent vote by mail voters in the county. And if I take a look at March, we had many voters who are vote by mail voters decide to drop them off at the polls on election day, waiting to the last minute, wanting to get all the information they could before they cast their vote. We'll be prepared for any lines that we might get, but you know, my hope is that people exercise the ability to use one of these other options to vote. And if they do come out to our vote locations, we're going to have a rapid way to pick up their the vote by mail if they bring it into us. And a lot of people really want to get that I voted sticker on election day, and we'll have it ready for them.
But doesn't your ballot comes with the I voted sticker now, right? That was smart because that's what we all
does.
That's true. But I know a lot of people on that social media post on election day with their sticker, but you know, at least we have the sticker. That was smart, whoever did that.
You can do it now. As you drop it off in a Dropbox. In fact, we're telling our members to do that if they are voting themselves, to share that just so the rest of the world can see that it works.
Yeah. Yes, I know. I've seen a lot of celebrities do it, which is good.
Yeah.
But Carol, we're getting a question from Alex. I know some of these things, again, just because I'm going to say it again to everyone watching, keep sending us your questions on Facebook Live. We're answering them in real time. And also, I think some of these questions might overlap because we have people dipping in and dipping out. And so, you know, we're going to repeat some things as well. But Alex is saying, Carol, what should we know or be aware of before mailing in our ballots?
Well, what you should know and be aware of is what's on your ballot. Prepare yourself for all of the elections that are on there, all of the offices, all of the statewide ballot propositions, all of the local ballot measures. You know, educate yourself about what's on the ballot, and that way you'll feel more prepared to fill out your ballot. Follow the directions. If you are returning the vote by mail ballot, you know, fill it out. Put it in that envelope, seal it, sign it, date it, put your address on it, and then take it to a Dropbox or the post office or to a voting location. Make sure you do all those things before you get in line.
I did see, and I think Santa Clara County, Shannon, was part of this study that showed some of the ways that ballots are rejected, and a signature, having the wrong signature, was one of the main reasons, especially for young people, that their ballots were rejected. And I reported on that and then got a lot of questions saying, well, how can I make sure that my signature is correct? How do you make sure that your signature matches what's on record?
Well, you can go ahead and re-register if you'd like to give a new signature, or update your signature if you think maybe it's changed. It's not like you can't look up your signature that we have on file online or anything, because that's confidential information that we don't put out there. So I'd recommend that they either, re-register or provide us a new signature, but they should sign as they normally sign. If they're registered with like a first, last, middle name, they can just put their first and last name. However, they typically do their signature. It doesn't have to match word for word how you're registered. It's how you typically sign. But if anybody is really unsure, they're welcome to give us a new signature. If you have a DMV registration or an ID card or a driver's license, we do get online registrations from a lot of young people that connect to the DMV, which brings over their signature. And that's also the signature that they have on their driver's license. So that may work for some people to look at, but they can always update their signature anytime.
For sure. Oh, sorry. Were you going to keep going, Shannon?
Well, I do want to say that all of the counties, if anybody's in doubt, when we look at the signatures compared to the voter's signature on file and the signature on the envelope, after multiple reviews, if we still feel it does not match or is missing, we actually, we all reach out to our voters to let them know that they can cure and provide us a signature. So people could be on the lookout for a letter after the ballot has come in at some point, providing them up until all the way till December 1st to give us a new signature.
Okay, that's good to know. And Tim, what are some of the common ways that you're seeing in your county ballots get rejected?
Right. So I think one of the most common ways that it gets rejected is people forget to sign the envelope when they return it to us. Or we see the wrong signature on an envelope because maybe there's two voters in a household and they accidentally signed the wrong envelope when they sent it in to us. So there's a couple. And all of us registrars, when we see those types of mistakes, we reach out to the voters and they have a period of time to remedy that. When we see an envelope come back to us without a signature, we're reaching out to that voter to let them know that we want that vote to count and we want them to come in and get that signature on the envelope.
That makes sense. Julia, what kinds of concerns are you hearing from voters? Obviously, it's a weird time to have to vote with COVID-19. What are some things that you think people are most concerned about right now?
There are quite a few themes of concern these days, unfortunately. So one of the ones we were hearing a lot about was this concern that USPS would be too slow or too unreliable to get vote by mail ballots out to voters and then back to the county. But we've seen voters across the state very successfully receiving their ballot by mail in a very timely fashion. And California has really a flexible timeline for the amount of time it is required for the ballot to get back to the county. So as long as you're sending your ballot by the end of election day, and it's actually postmarked on election day, there's a grace period of 17 days. And that's when the deadline hits for the ballot has to have returned to the county. So people just are hearing news stories about vote by mail being slow or unreliable that don't really stand up to further analysis, but not everyone has kind of that detailed background on the ins and outs of the mail system and the voting deadlines in California. And then separate from that, we're also seeing kind of generalized fears on a number of themes around in-person voting. So people are worried about long lines. People are worried about COVID safety. Will they be safe going in person, indoors to vote? And then as we discussed earlier, there are some concerns about possible voter intimidation. So for that, it's really important to continue to remind voters that there are serious precautions being taken by the counties to make sure in-person voting is safe, to protect people from COVID. PPE will be worn, PPE will be available to voters. Voters need to comply with public health requirements. All of those things we just need to explain to people what they can expect when they go to vote in person, and reassure them about all the ways that it will be safe.
For sure. And Carol, was someone else chiming in? Did someone chime in? Oh, okay. Carol, is there, going off of that, is there any reason to believe, and I'm sure all of you could speak to this, but any reason to believe that mail-in voting leads to more voter fraud?
No, there have been studies over time, particularly in states like Oregon, which has done nothing but vote by mail elections since the year 2000. The incidence of fraud is really, really, really minuscule. And there's just no reason to believe that it will be any different this time around. Plus, here in California, in the March election, which seems like a really long time ago, but it was just March 2020, 72% of the ballots cast were vote by mail ballots. Some of that was by postage, some of that was by dropping off in drop boxes or vote centers. There were no problems. We are in California. I think somebody said this. We are very fortunate that we have a system that is well thought out, and I think they've covered all the bases they could possibly conceive of, and things generally run very smoothly.
Yes, we are certainly lucky to have that. I want to get back over to our county registrar of voters, Shannon and Tim. If either of you want to speak to what you're doing to protect voters that do want to vote in person. I know you guys have pretty stringent COVID policies in place.
Do you want to start, Shannon?
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay, so as far as in-person voting and the protections in place for COVID, I want to start with the options that people are going to have at our in-person voting sites, our accessible voting locations. If they have their ballot and it's already in an envelope, we're going to have a drive-through so that they can stay in their car and just hand us their ballot and receive their I voted sticker. We're also going to be offering curbside voting. So if they come up to one of these locations, they can give us their information. We can get their ballot printed out for them and run it out to their car so that they can stay in the safety of their car and vote. So what we're trying to do at these locations is make the choice to come into the facility one of the last choices. So if they do choose to come into the facility to vote on one of the touchscreen devices that we have, or to vote in one of the booths, we'll have a limited number of people who can come indoors to vote, and we'll have all of the PPE in place. We'll be wiping down all of the equipment. If they don't have a face covering, we're going to offer that to them. We'll have that available for our voters. We're also going to have gloves available for our voters. We'll be wiping down stylus, and all the protections that you would expect will be in place. We'll be sterilizing the place regularly. And for those people, if we have too many people who want to come in, we'll have a queuing system outside where they can safely stage outside, distance, or even wait in their car for the time to come in.
Shannon, similar plan, it sounds like?
Definitely similar plan. Our curbside voting is more reserved for ADA accessibility, or those that may have COVID symptoms. We ask them to stay outside. So otherwise, we're doing along the same lines with the PPE and the social distancing and, one-way routes throughout the vote center with the equipment spaced out and the sanitizing. And yes, if a voter doesn't have a mask, we will offer them masks and gloves, whatever they would like. And we do ask our voters, to please wear a mask when you come in, and we will provide one if you don't. But yes, basically the same thing, following all the health and safety protocols in our office or at a vote center, yes.
Okay, and Carol, we're getting a question from Kenya Hatcher. She says, what if I make a mistake on my ballot? Can I cross it out and pick the right circle?
That's not a good idea. A better idea would be to go to a voting location, bring that ballot with you, and ask for a new one. And you can get one that will remove all possible, questions about what you really meant when you voted. So it would be much better to just go get a new clean one, and to take the old one with you so you can surrender it, and then it will know that you voted only once. And it's not unusual for that to happen, or to have coffee spilled all over it or the dog chew on it. Those things do happen, but registrars are prepared for that. And the best way to go about it is to go to a voting location and explain the situation, surrender that ballot, and you can get a new one.
Which brings me to one another comment. I'm not sure exactly who wants to jump in and answer this, but Richard says, I know people who vote for that no longer live with them. I'm not exactly sure what that means, or maybe, I mean, we always hear these things like, oh, someone got a ballot for their mother who passed away, or, you know, and then they're able to vote for that person. How can you reassure people, or what's the process to make sure that that doesn't happen?
I can take that one.
Okay.
But we're doing signature verification. So in your scenario where someone has passed away, someone else is voting their ballot, every single ballot that comes in, we are comparing the signature on the envelope to the signature of the voter, not, you know, of the person who was deceased would be the record we pull up. So we're verifying signatures before we would even count that ballot. So if someone is forging the signature, most likely we would be, you know, we would be able to see that because it's not going to match. And then if we feel it doesn't match, we will send a correspondence, as Tim, you know, said earlier, we were talking about, to the voter to let them know the signature doesn't match. So there are safeguards in place to catch those kind of things.
Absolutely. And going back, as I said, we're going to kind of repeat certain things. Randy chimed in and said, have we already discussed the fake vote boxes in California, which was obviously a big topic of discussion. Julie, I'm not sure if you had reaction to that when you saw that story this week, what you thought was the significance of knowing that was happening.
Yeah, so, you know, it's really appalling when people are trying to deceive voters and muddle the election system. It harms the voters who are actually in that interaction, who might have been confused and dropped off a ballot in an unauthorized Dropbox where we don't know whether those are actually eventually being delivered to the county elections office. But the greater harm in many ways is that it makes people skeptical of our entire system. And so it's really a reminder around messaging and about letting people know that there are these official county drop boxes. There are these significant precautions around the drop boxes, all the steps we talked about to ensure they're secure, that they're collected regularly in teams, that there are lots of rules and procedures to make sure that the county drop boxes are safe and that the ballots that are put into them make it to the registrar's office and get processed correctly. So just uplifting the legitimate components of the electoral process is something we have to do continuously, because we never know if someone who's a wrongdoer is going to go put up a fake Dropbox or share incorrect information on social media or do something else that can confuse voters and make it harder for them to submit their ballot.
Carol, is this something that we're seeing new this year, or have we seen this type of behavior in the past? There's so much rhetoric coming from the that I think has sort of stirred the pot this year particularly, but I'm wondering if it's something we've also seen in the past.
Fake drop boxes? I have never heard of those before now. At least not in California, maybe somewhere else, but I have, that was a new one on me. When I saw that on Sunday, I had no idea that people would even think about doing that, because to me, the elections offices run the elections, and you know, that's the way it should be. And
is that concerning to you? I mean, do you think that we're going to be seeing more of this, and should voters be concerned?
I think that if we keep talking about checking the official information that came in your ballot package that is online from elections officials, not from private individuals or, you know, political parties or whatever, to assure people that there are places they can go to get the actual information and to make sure they go there. I think it's just a matter of just repeating and repeating and repeating, so that people understand that. They hear about things far away and sometimes they just assume it's happening in their backyard. That's not necessarily true either, but the main thing is elections are run by the elections offices. Check the official sources of information and use those, and you'll be fine if you do that.
For sure. Chris Clark is asking us, and Tim, I'm going to give this one to you. He says, do different colors mean different things on return envelopes?
Yes. So in our county, we have two different types of elections that we're running, depending on the local election that we have. We have three cities in our county that are ranked choice voting cities. I mean, it's a different way of voting. You choose by rank the choices of candidates, and it allows for us to select a candidate based upon choice. But we have three cities that have those types of elections going, and we've given them a different color envelope for returning, so we can isolate those votes as we go through the processing.
Okay, and Shannon, Linda is saying, if you unknowingly put your ballot in a fake Dropbox, can you go to the registrar of voters and give them your tab and stop that ballot and get a new one?
We haven't had any fake ballot boxes in our county. That would be something that I would definitely consider. I first probably would want to see if the ballot was returned, you know, but yes, that is an option that I would consider.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we've seen, for people watching, I don't think we've actually seen any instances of these fake ballot drop boxes here in the Bay Area yet. Hopefully it stays that way. It's mostly in Southern California and I think Fresno. So thankfully we haven't seen it here. So Dave is asking, he says, my son's ballot arrived at my home in San Mateo, but he is going to college in Maine. Can I mail it to him so he can vote, or do I just shred it?
I think that depends. If there's time to send it to him, you're welcome to do that and get it back to us, you know, to be postmarked by election day. There's also remote accessible vote by mail, which is normally for maybe persons with disabilities or military or overseas voters. But for this one election, it has been open to all voters. So the college student could access, like, you know, our website and access this ballot. They download the ballot, make their choices. It is not online voting, but downloading and printing. And then they could mail us the ballot. So that does save on some of the time of trying to send a ballot over to them. But so there are several options for that student.
Okay. Julia, going back to poll monitoring, we're getting a question about that. If you see something suspicious at your polling location, what should you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would do is let the staff know at the voting location. There are trained poll workers who will know how to respond and whether the issue needs to be escalated to the county elections office. And then secondly, I would call the National Voter Protection Hotlines. They are operating call centers all over the country, and they are helping troubleshoot voters' problems, answer their basic questions, and then if needed, they can help with escalating issues to elections offices. And then they're also collecting information so that after the election, we have an idea of what kind of problems people were facing out in the field. So I can pull up that hotline. I should have had it on hand right now, but I will let you know.
Yeah, when you find it, let us know. Don't worry, we're going to be here. So Holly is asking, my ballot has not been counted yet. Is it true that each page needs to be folded individually? I did not do this. Carol, is that something you want, or Tim?
I'm going to punt that to the people who actually have to process those things.
Yeah, Tim.
So we ask that the ballots get folded a certain way as they go into the envelope, because it makes it easier for us to process through our systems. But if they folded them together, we're going to unfold them, and we're going to process those votes. We just ask them to do it a certain way because it makes it thinner and it makes it easier for us to run through our systems. But no, those votes will get counted.
You, Holly, you're good. Okay, great. And but speaking of, she said, my ballot has not been counted yet. How can you track? You put your ballot in a Dropbox. What are the ways to track your ballot, making sure it actually made it to your county registrar of voters office? Carol, you're nodding. Is that you, or should we punt that to Shannon?
No, I can do that.
Okay.
There's a statewide website you can go to called Where's My Ballot? You can you put in your name, your birth date, I believe your zip code, and you indicate whether you want a text or an email or even a phone call, and you will be notified of certain stages in the voting process. One is that your vote by mail ballot has been mailed to you. One is that it has been received by the elections office, and the third one is that it's actually been counted. And so it's a really easy way to get that information. I highly recommend it. And I was thrilled to see mine when last Monday I was told my ballot's on the way, and the next day it showed up in my mailbox. I thought, yeah, this works. I like this. So I highly recommend doing that. It's called Where's My Ballot?
Where'smyballot.com.
Its formal title is Where's My Ballot sos.ca.gov.
Okay, we'll Google it.
Yeah. Google it. Yeah.
Google Where's My
If you
Ballot.
say Where's My Ballot California and Google, it'll come up.
Okay, good. Yes, it is sort of fun to track it. And so I want to go back to something we talked in the beginning. And again, whoever wants to chime in on this one, why is there so much concern? Why is there so much, we're hearing, again, TV pundits and everyone's prepping for a long weeks or days after the election that it's going to take to count all the ballots. Why is that?
So I can take that. It really is going to depend on how our voters decide to turn in their ballots this time. And we don't have anything that we can look at that says, it's very similar to anything else, because we haven't seen a pandemic and the effect on an election. But as was said, we're going to be receiving the mail for 17 days after the election. And if ballots come in postmarked on election day or earlier, those ballots are going to get counted. We will continue receiving that for 17 days before we're able to say that it's the unofficial final, before we go into the next part of the canvass of the election. And as Shannon said, we have until December 3rd to certify the election. And I believe many of us are probably going to use all that time because of all of what we have to go through with this election. We weren't given any less time, or any more time to process the votes because of the circumstances. So I would expect we're going to see a lot of the registrars who are going to have to take most of the time.
Can I add something to that? I read, I thought this was a great analogy. Treat election day like it's tax day. It's the day you have to have your paperwork in, but you don't expect your refund that night or the next day. You wait a couple of weeks. And so that's what this election is going to be like. You don't expect results, really final results, that night or the next day. It will take several weeks. And if you adjust your expectations, then you won't be so anxious.
That's a really good way of thinking about it. And on that note, I think that we've covered all of our questions that have been coming in. So I think as we wrap this up, go around to each of you. And if you just want to say a few final words on your final message to voters who have concerns, I know a lot of people are excited to vote this year, but also have concerns. So Shannon, if you want to start.
I guess, well, one of my basic messages is been to get prepared, make your plan to vote, and get out and vote. You can go online and register. You can go online and confirm your registration if you need to do any updates, get everything in order. And the deadline to register to receive a ballot in the mail is October 19th, but you can use conditional voter registration at any of the voting locations from October 20th through November 3rd. But if you make your plan now and you get registered, you'll be all set, and we'll mail you a ballot, and you can even vote from home. So please just be prepared and look at those inserts with the ballots and information we mail you of all the drop-off locations and all of the vote centers, and you'll be all set to go.
Tam, you want to jump in?
Sure, and I'm going to echo what Shannon's saying. We want to have our voters understand that in California, we are giving you many options to get your vote in safely. And we want our voters to really understand what their options are. So please read what materials out there for you. Please look at our website and the Secretary of State's website and find the approach to voting that's going to work for you. As Shannon said, plan that out. I would say if you can get your vote in early, it will get processed there. Hopefully on election night, you'll be one of the first votes counted.
Yep, exactly. Good advice. Who are we good? Carol.
Oh, you ask a League of Women Voters about elections, and I'll give you the whole spiel. So I'll do it very shortly. This is a representative government, and we as voters have a voice in our government, and this is our time to express that voice. So don't be intimidated by all the things you've heard. You're in good hands here in California. You have the two fine people here and in all the counties across the state. So don't skip something. Don't skip out on this election because you're concerned that it won't matter, because it does matter. Every single time it matters. In the end, we count votes. We don't count money, we count votes. And that determines who is elected. That determines if ballot measures pass or don't pass. So do not be intimidated. Make your voice heard and do it in one of the 3 or 4 ways that you now have.
Good advice. And we will leave it with Julia. Your final words, Julia.
Yeah, well, I'll reiterate, explore your options and make a plan. Vote early if you can. But if you didn't get a chance to, remember, you can still vote on election day. You can even register on election day. So we don't want anyone to feel like they've missed their chance to participate in this election. And then finally, I just would encourage all your viewers to pause and think about who they know who maybe isn't registered to vote, or is registered but isn't a very active voter, or is registered but has a language barrier and might want some assistance figuring out if there are resources so they can vote in their language. And reach out to those folks and see if you can help them figure out their voting plan and access those resources and become voters too.
Absolutely. Well, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for answering my questions and all of our viewers' questions. It's really enlightening. And I've been, like I said, I've been to the Santa Clara County Register of Voters, and it's just an incredible operation, what you guys do. And we thank you for it. It's such important work. So thank you guys, Carol, Julia, Shannon, and Tim. I know you guys have a busy few weeks ahead of you. Good luck and have a great night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Vote Tuesday, November 3rd, right? And do it before. All right. Have a good one. Good night. Good night, Facebook.